Welcome. I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we're going to be talking about basically the last video I had a guest on, Sharky, and we were talking about a new idea of a comp he came up with, the Infinity comp. Basically the idea of just continuing your buffs ad nauseum, just having buff extenders going wild and keeping all your buffs on, including and especially shields. And this is a way to maximize a champion like Underpriest Brogni. So you're building massive shields on your champions and using that to really sustain and keep your team alive for a lot longer. And it's an incredibly ingenious method. I mean, we all know how powerful a champion like Valkyrie is. Arguably, in my opinion, the best champion in this game. And a big part of that is the fact that she puts up the largest shield in this game that doesn't rely on actually doing damage first. So for Clan Boss, you're not going to get a bigger shield than the one you get from Valkyrie. And as a result, that comp is pretty nuts, right? You're putting massive shields on your champions. It's a tricky one though. And I was really excited to bring him on and show that composition, show that idea behind it. Not only the building of the shields constantly with the buff extenders and Brogni, but also the idea of using reflex sets to help cool down those buff extender durations so that you're able to keep those buffs up very long time. It was really smart, really well done. My only issue with it was it utilized some very specific champions that not everybody has. It utilized Krisk, it utilized Lanakis, it utilized two Lanakis actually, and it utilized Underpriest Brogni. I don't think that you have to utilize all those champions to have success using this comp. However, one of the things that I was a little hesitant about with it is that I feel like some of those champions are really important in order to maximize its possibilities. Lanakis, obviously, as a buff extender is phenomenal, but just as importantly, she brings a 30% turn meter boost. That allows you to go a lot faster at a lot slower speeds. In the same token, Krisk is the only champion that can extend buffs and put a increased speed buff on your champions. And when that's being extended and staying on the full fight, again, it allows your champions to go faster at much slower speeds. I've been playing around with it. I've been trying to figure out how can I do this with maybe two buff extenders? How can I utilize reflex to make that work? How can I, try to make this work? Because I don't have Lanakis or Krisk on my account. I have Brogni, and in order to maximize the shield possibilities, there is no other champion you can use. But being in a position that I am, much like you guys, where maybe you don't have a Krisk or a Lanakis or either, how can I make this type of team work? It's tricky. And the, I would say, high-end damage potential is limited. So you have to kind of keep those things in mind when you're trying to do a build like this. It's tricky. It's just not easy. There's no two ways about it. So I'm sure there's a million possible ways to make something like this very successful. I haven't tried all of them. I've only tried a couple, but I did try them, and I kind of want to show you the results of that. Both the failures and I'm hopeful successes. I have an idea for a team I haven't built that I think can be pretty good. Maybe not amazing good, maybe not like super crazy, but I'm hopeful something that is a viable alternative for people out there. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at that comp. We're going to look at some ways that I feel like I can build it. Some ideas I had that maybe didn't work, and we'll just kind of take a peek at it. So I'll go over some of the basic stuff, like some of the basic parts of the builds and the speeds, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over things that you guys don't really need to know or should be able to figure out on your own. So just bear with me on that. This is not that kind of a video. I'm struggling to make this one really work for me, but I'm excited to see what some of the bigger brains out there are doing. Like Murder Inc. just put out a video showing what the potential of this type of a comp, and it was crazy good. Way better than I was thinking. And I'm really thankful that he put that out there. I know him and Sharky have been talking about that and, been conferring with each other and working in tandem to make that type of a team and make it successful. So it's really great to be able to see that kind of idea really flourish with a high level account. In the meantime, you guys can see kind of what I put together, what I was struggling with, where I was thinking about this team, and hopefully maybe it's not going to make your clan boss team all that much better, but it gets you thinking, right? Gets the mind working and, the theory crafting working, because that's really the fun part about clan boss is we're able to make some, pretty interesting things using these mechanics. So I'm really excited about that. I do want to let you know, obviously, if you enjoy the music, links down below, Soundstripe, that's where you'll find it. So check it out. If you want any help coaching, if you want to talk about these ideas like I'm having here, sign up for coaching through my Patreon. It's a great way to do that. Basically, just have a 30-minute conversation with me, and it's a lot of fun. I can help you, or we can just chat, whatever you like. Let's look real quick at the champions and the tune, and we'll go from there. Okay, guys, as you can see, this is the team I was trying to make work. We've got Lydia in there to give us speed. I've got Godseeker and Sandlashed, both are in reflex gear to try and get those buff extensions going over and over. I even brought an Iron Brago just to give us a little bit more oomph so that we're not dying, as I built some of these guys kind of light, and Brogni's there obviously for the shields. What I was finding is these 3-turn cooldowns, even with reflex gear, they're not proccing enough to keep the buffs up fully. And here's how this works, right? Underpriest Brogni puts up a shield buff for 2 turns. If these guys are refreshing every 3 turns and extending it, that's 1 turn too few to keep the buffs on everybody for the full fight. And that's really where we're running into problems. We need that reflex. We need that cycle of magic to really proc and get that refresh of those skills so that they can use them again. I did my best to try and get that cooldown as regular as possible. It doesn't seem like it's enough. And I'll show you guys that in this run real quick. Real fast, I'll show you guys kind of the idea. I actually have this team built out to a 2-1 ratio. There's a comp on the website. It's the Lydia plus an extender, and I basically took those speeds and tweaked them a little bit because there is some room there to make this work, especially when you're fully extending all the buffs and they're staying up permanently. I was able to build this team, and it mostly stays in sync, right? As long as we keep the buffs up, we're at a 2-1 ratio. So we have Lydia here. 271. I did put her in a shield set just to try and get that part going. Obviously, Underpriest Brogni here. I try to build him with as much attack as possible so that he can make those shields as big as possible. Hence the crit damage, hence the attack. Brian Brago's great, right? Going 246. Again, getting that speed up there. Godseeker Aniri, who I absolutely love. You can see the reflex gear on her is key. Got her with the crit rate, not the crit damage, but that's okay. There we go. Sandlashed Survivor here, also in reflex. Also good defense and at the right speed to make this work. So those are the speeds. Everybody pretty much has normal masteries except for Sandlash. I don't even have full masteries on, but Sandlash and Godseeker, I did put Cycle of Magic on. I thought that was important to try and get those cooldowns as much as possible. You can see I've got the refresh amulet here, which is, just again, trying to get that RNG working as much as possible. I had to make a small change here with Godseeker. I didn't have her masteries quite right, but she's up to like 210 speed now, a little bit more defense. But basically, I gave her Cycle of Magic as well, so she can refresh her skills. I just want that extension to happen as much as possible, as often as possible. So that's really what I was banking on here and trying to get to have happen, because the idea is we're keeping these buffs up full time. I don't have to have every skill on. Now, obviously, Sandlash we're going to have, and actually we're going to go ahead and give her just normal. She's going to open with the Endless Sands. She's going towards the end of the comp. Iron Brago, we're actually starting with we can actually start with the A2 now. I had to make some changes, so it's always interesting getting these things work. We can start with Godseeker Aniri's extension as well. We could turn off the Rise to Glory, but honestly, I like a little revive if somebody dies. It's not a bad thing to have. Underpriest Brogni, we are going to start with the buff for the block debuffs and the shield, and then we turn that skill off. Won't ever have it again. So if we don't get a refresh, that's going to be an issue, obviously. And with Lydia here, we can go ahead and start with the speed buff and just try and get all those buffs going and get the extensions right off the bat. That's the goal here. Obviously there's some timing stuff. We can manipulate it a little bit, but the goal is just really to get that going as fast as possible and keep it moving as much as possible. And she's going to be using this skill over and over and over again to keep the decreased defense and weaken up anyway. So it's not like we have to make that the first skill used, but I don't see any issue doing that. And it should work nice and smooth, at least in the beginning. So we'll see here. So let's just jump in. We'll just kind of watch and see how it goes. And I'll talk you through kind of some of the things I've noticed. Actually, I can click auto from the start because it works. So we get the speed up, we get the buffs up, we get the shield, increased defense, and then we get the extensions going. And at this point, we're just trying to keep all these buffs up as long as possible. The issue is if at least one of them doesn't cool down in between, we get ourselves into trouble. We're not able to extend the buffs the full time. Because they're, if it's happening every 3 turns, the buffs, they just don't last long enough. So we need to have at least 3 extensions we need to have at least 1 extension every turn. That's why in the video we showed before, we had 2 Lanakises and a Krisk. That's 1 extension every turn. And then when you get that cycle of revenge the cycle of magic cooldown, it gives you an extra one, right? So you can get an extra turn going in there. When the cooldowns happen in the reflex early, all of a sudden you get an extra cooldown in there. So we are really relying on that reflex, those refresh accessories, the cycle of magic, all of that. We're really relying on that happening for both Sandlash and Godseeker as much as possible. It's very possible that we can get a bunch of them, RNG works, we can get a bunch of them early, then maybe we don't need as many later, but that's going to be the trick. And if these shields fall off, it's going to be because we weren't getting enough refresh. So there's definitely some RNG at play here. And I don't know about you, I don't really like RNG. I like the mystery of it, but I prefer to have my clan boss team have regular runs. So this is a little bit of a tricky one, right? Without that 3rd extender, it is a little bit more RNG. Now, obviously, more refresh accessories, the reflex gear, not to mention cycle magic, all of that should proc pretty regularly enough where I feel like this should extend, and we should keep these buffs on full. But you see Iron Brago, he's down to 1 turn. If we don't get it here from Godseeker, if we don't get it here from Sandlashed, those shields are going to fall off. And that's what's going to happen right here. And once those shields fall off, we're kind of in trouble. Now, he does have the original shield because it's a 3-turn duration, so at least that, but you can see they fell off Lydia right there. Now Lydia's exposed, basically. Now, it doesn't mean everything's ruined, right? We still have strengthen, we still have increased defense, we still have the speed. All those buffs are still on us. But unless I pause it and get Underpriest Brogni here to use his shield and his block debuffs, we won't have that on these other champions for the rest of the fight. So we can come in here and we can use this right now and get that shield back on Lydia. That wouldn't be a bad thing to do. I think what I'm gonna do actually is just wait 1 more turn before I put that out there so that Brogni can extend it right away, hopefully. But yeah, that's kind of the issue here, right? So I found myself interrupting my runs once or twice to be able to get that shield back up when it falls off. But you can see we get those decreased cooldowns. That's really great. The question is, how long can it last? How much can it stay up? And here you go. Now we're back in the flow of things. There's an extension, and there's the growth of the shield. We can start that process again and start regrowing that shield on Lydia. How long does it last? I'm not 100% sure. If we stay attentive and are willing to jump back in, refresh that shield, it's not so bad. Now we can always we can just not eliminate the skill from Brogni. It's a totally reasonable thing to do. The issue is though, if those shields get too low, if they get down to 1 turn, he's just going to replace them. So we miss that chance to get that late extension. But you can see we're starting to build up some actual durations on these. We're getting a couple of those procs right away. The RNG is working in our favor right now, and those shields are getting pretty darn big. So now this team might have a good opportunity to get to a pretty good level here. And we're still doing about 1 million damage a turn. And I mean, I think you kind of saw the builds. It's not like it's maxed out for damage, right? I tried to give everybody 100% crit rate, wasn't successful with everybody. Tried to give them crit damage, wasn't successful with everybody. But, just the reflect procs from Brogni, the damage we are getting from Iron Brago and Godseeker, pretty solid, I would say. So it's kind of an interesting team. There's some potential here. I'm going to go ahead and let this run, let you guys watch. My guess is these shields will fall off at one point here. But if they stay on, this could easily be a 2-key team, which would be pretty fantastic. So let me get myself off the screen and you guys can watch. guys can see here, we lost our shields. This is a major issue, right? This is where it gets dicey. Turn 26, it's still pretty early in the run and we already lost our shields. We've had increased defense the whole time. We've had strengthen the whole time. We've had decreased attack the whole time. Losing that shield right here is problematic. Now, to be fair, Iron Brago is weak affinity, so not landing decreased attack could be a thing, but also, you know, we lost our shields already. And those massive shields, they're like not being penetrated. You can look at the difference between Sandlash and Godseeker and the rest of them. It's a big loss because at this point of the fight, we're not gaining our shields anymore. We're maintaining our shields. We're not really what I'd call growing it. So that's going to be kind of the issue at this point. We'll see how we can do here. My guess is probably not that great, but I'm going to go ahead and let this run. If I see it fall off again, I'll manual and try and get Brogni to put it back up. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, I mean, almost 40 million damage. Yes, I had a manual towards the end of it, not my favorite thing, but I only had to step in once or twice to get to that 2 key damage area, that 35 million or so. I've done a run with this previously where I kind of just left it go on auto. I did it, also stepping in, and we got about 30 million on average. So this is actually the good result that I had. Which I don't think is bad, right? If I can do 3 key damage in, 25 turns, doesn't take a lot of time. It's not a bad result at all. I don't think that's bad at all. But it isn't that crazy damage. I think if I had a Krisk that I could bring in instead of Iron Brago, Dunskies, right? All of a sudden that shield's never falling off. And you guys saw the size of that thing. It was massive. I could also bring in another debuff, a buff extender, right? Another Sandlash, another Godseeker, maybe even a Valerie. And maybe that's what I really need. Bringing in some more duration, not worrying about the stuff that Iron Brago brings. Maybe I don't worry about increased defense. I don't worry about decreased attack. And we just let the shields do all the work. There's going to be limits to that, though. It's not going to survive forever. And without those things, decreased attack limits how much damage those shields take. So how long do they stay on and stay up? Increased defense does the same thing. I can build all my champions with high defense, and most of them have it because they're defensive champions. But right now, my Underpriest Brogni is built for offense. He's built to do damage so that he can make those shields as big as possible. I would have to change a lot of stuff on him to do that, and maybe that's worth it. Right now, Lydia's not exactly, super big either. There's a lot of potential to this type of team, though. So I really like what is here. I really do. I think it needs some work, needs some big minds on it. But this gives you guys an idea of what this comp does when you're trying to, like, really budget it out, right? If you don't have your Lanakis, you don't have your Krisk, and you don't bring in the third extender, it's a little bit iffy. If you bring in a third extender, though, it's a little bit different, right? It works a lot better in the sense that you're keeping those shields up. So let's go ahead, and I think what I'll do right now is I'm going to get a Flesh-Tearer fitted out. I'll bring him in instead of Iron Brago, and we'll see what we can do in that case. Maybe I'll give him some Reflex instead of Sandlashed or Godseeker, and we'll see. Do those 3 buff extenders, do they change the game at all? Do we need that decrease attack and increase defense from Iron Brago? I don't know. So yeah, I'll come back in a second. Okay, made the change. Got Flesh-Tearer at basically at Iron Brago's speed, and slowed Godseeker down to go back to the slow speed for this comp. So I'm sorry. So yeah, basically swap those around. So Flesh-Tearer is now at Godseeker speed. Godseeker's at Iron Brago speed. That way we can get a little more damage in. Flesh-Tearer is not a big damage dealer, so that's definitely a negative part of this. Godseeker's right here. So you can see we definitely upped her crit damage, got her crit rate up to 100%, slowed her down. Defense is good. Everything else is jolly good. Didn't change the masteries. And then Flesh-Tearer here, I put him in the reflex gear because that was important. With the 4-turn cooldown for his ability, we wanted him in reflex. 246 speed, solid defense, attack. Now, we don't have, you can see the masteries here. One of the things we don't have is these are probably not perfect either, by the way. I should have taken these 2 over here as opposed to these 2, but whatever, it's not that big a deal. If we're healing, if that's important, we're already about to die, so the shield should protect us. Now, we don't have the shield from Iron Brago. We don't have this passive ability with his defense. That's definitely going to impact things as far as staying alive, because our defense is not that great, so that's definitely going to be an issue. But I didn't want to change too much of the stuff around. Just so you know how I did Flesh-Tearer, I totally took out his A3 and just made him use his A2 prioritize. That's what we want, to have the reflex have the most impact. So like, this is another, just this one's full auto here. We'll just see how it goes, and the buff should not fall off at all, if assuming Flesh-Tearer can get those cooldowns, and that's going to be the real big thing. But with 3 extra turns, with an extra turn there to get the cooldown, it should work out pretty good for us, I'm hoping. But yeah, you can see the buffs are there. We're already extending them, the shields I should say, growing those out, and yeah, it's just gonna, hopefully this will last and we'll stay alive long enough to make this work. Now, an interesting thing here, we're getting most of our damage from Brogni, right? That's the big thing. Obviously having decreased defense and weaken on the boss ups our defense, ups our damage. There's a champion that just came out, Tuhanarak, who I really like, but she's kind of like Lydia in reverse. She brings an increased defense buff with her. She brings a decreased attack buff with her. She might be an interesting champion to use instead of Lydia. Would probably let this team last a lot longer. Will it do as much damage? Will the shields get as big? That I can't answer for you, but it would make gearing a lot easier because you don't have to build up the defense. You'll have that increased defense buff up the full fight. So some interesting alternatives there. This is going to be interesting to see though, where our damage lies. We're already definitely doing less damage than we did before, but the interesting thing is these buffs should stay up the full fight. So the shields are going to be very impactful. I'm just really interested to see how long we last, what kind of damage we do. So I'll take myself off the screen, let you guys watch, and we'll see where we get to at the end of it. Not too shabby. I mean, it was pretty cool seeing those buffs stay up the entire fight. Obviously, Brogny's doing all of our damage here. You know, it's not a bad comp at all, I would say. You know, I'll answer a couple of the questions you guys are gonna have. Can you do this without Lydia? Absolutely. Would I recommend it? Absolutely not. That decreased defense and weaken is so strong, guys. It's super helpful. Can you do this without Godseeker? Sure. Sandlashed, sure. Like, you don't need any particular buff extender, but you need the 3 buff extenders to keep this up the full fight. And Brogny, yeah, you have to have Brogny. There's no getting around that. Until we get another champion that can also extend shields, there's just no getting around that, unfortunately. So this comp is really cool. It doesn't leave a lot of room for damage dealers, obviously. Having a champion like Krisk is so nice for a team like this. Really ups the potential of it. Same with bringing in a champion like Lanakis, you know, being able to get that turn meter boost in addition to the buff extension, it's really strong. In addition to the ally attacks, is really, really strong. And that's how you can get away without having a tune for it. I think without Lanakis, and maybe even without Lanakis for sure, I think you do need to tune this team. You do need to go with that 2-1 ratio to really maximize it. You could probably do this at a 1-1 ratio, but you're going to be lowering the damage threshold. So that's another thing to keep in mind with that. You still need the same amount of extenders. It doesn't matter how fast you go. To keep the buffs up, you need to have 3 champions extending buffs, or at least you need to have the buffs extended, you know, once per turn on that kind of a ratio, right? So we have 3 buff extenders, and with the reflex, basically they're all extending at least once every 3 turns. And that's what you need in order to maintain buffs for the full fight. But it was pretty cool. And Brogny has way lower defense than everybody else, is why he died so much earlier than the rest of the comp, which I thought, you know, that's just kind of how that works. So very interesting team, very fun. And yeah, I'm excited to see some people do some crazy builds with it. I still think there's a ton of potential with this team. And I'm always excited when we get more champions that can do different things. We're going to see some more opportunities and options of how to build this type of team and do it well. I don't think that 2-3 turn, I don't think you can get away with just 2 buff extenders. I think you really do need 3 in order to have it be a regular comp where the buffs stay up the full fight. It's certainly possible. I mean, we saw with 2-3 turn buff extenders, it can last. It's just not going to be one of those crazy, you know, gotta have it type of comps. Something regular. There's going to be some RNG. You're going to have some bad runs with it. So you're going to want to keep that in mind. And I do think Lydia is important. You can always use any turn meter boost, any champion that gives you a regular turn meter buff, right? Because we're keeping it up the full fight. You can get to a 2-1 ratio with pretty much anybody, right? Apothecary, Haikatune, any of those work. You can even do it with like an Eris or a Claude Beastfeeder. But the reason why Lydia is so good is that decreased defense and weaken in conjunction with Brogny's increasing the shields. If you think about it, it's kind of like bailing a boat, right? You don't want to do it with just like a little old shovel. You want to use a bucket. Well, Lydia gives you that bucket. Putting that decreased defense and weaken makes his damage just go up. Not to mention the damage you get from the Giant Slayer procs is going to be bigger too. If you just give him that little old shovel without that decreased defense and weaken, it's just not going to be as effective. So you got to kind of balance those things of what you need and how to stay alive and how to build those shields. It's tricky. This is kind of one of those trickier comps where the champions you bring in really, really has a big impact. But it's a very cool build. I'm very excited to see what some people in the community are going to build with it. I feel like we're really still scratching the surface of what this can do. I know I am, for example. And I don't have great gear. Like, my gear's good, but like I don't have great reflex gear. So I'm not really even able to show the full potential of what this can do. I can basically equip 2 champions in reflex. Out 3, it gets a little dicey. So pretty limited in that account. But hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Hit the Soundstripe link if you like the music. Subscribe, like the video, because I like you guys. And so till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.